Go to the data, CNN's own data from our own data analyst Harriet. President Trump has an 87% approval rating among Republicans, which is higher than Barack Obama's approval rating among Democrats at this point in his term, higher than where George W. Bush was in his term. He is the strongest, for his own party, strongest president at this point in his second term in the modern era. That's number one. Number two, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, had a falling out with the president over politics. He showed her a poll that said she couldn't win statewide in Georgia.
That's exactly
she got mad. She got mad. And by the way, she stands with a group of isolationists who just happen to disagree with the president over, say, taking away Iran's nuclear weapons and some other issues. That's fine. He's the president. She's not. And if you want to talk about whether the president has a hold on his party or whether he's a lame duck, I'll just submit that when he withdrew his endorsement of Greene, she lasted a week and then had to resign from Congress. That's not weakness. That is
a couple things about that, Scott, because first of all, I think you understand that a lot of Trump's MAGA base is not just people who are registered Republicans. A lot of them are people who are new to the system.
I've heard from many folks who were Trump supporters, voted for Trump both times, who's like, well, this is not what I voted for. And what they're referring to specifically are families being torn apart, kids being having their parents picked up and taken away from in front of schools, from having restaurant workers and other folks who are hardworking but undocumented being disappeared from their community. And I think the rhetoric and the reality are now crashing together of when you talk about illegals and violence versus the people that are in a community that have been working there and building relationships. There is a massive disconnect.
I would like to go back, though, and I'm interested in your two-time Trump voting friends who are apparently phone banking you that are surprised that he is interested in enforcing our immigration laws, because it is literally what he's been running on since he started in 2015. If you voted for Donald Trump two or three times and you're unsure about why he's deporting people, I dispute it.
So
I'm just
Scott,
sorry.
We are on totally the same page.
Boy. So once again, we got to talk about this topic that continues to be a big talking point online, which is this idea that MAGA's dead, that Trump is in the water. His second administration has been a complete and total failure. Nobody got what they voted for. All of this stuff that you see mainly online. And I've already talked about this before, but I want to go over some new data points once again to put some context around a lot of this stuff, because like I told you guys in the past, a lot of this stuff is being said by people who first and foremost are not MAGA, right? This is coming from leftists, liberals who are trying to divide MAGA, and people who, are on the conservative side of the aisle, who are right-wing, who probably are more independent-leaning, who just recently started to identify with MAGA, or people who, were historically MAGA that see President Trump not being able to run again as an opportunity, right? A lot of this really is about personal agendas rather than the reality of MAGA or how Republican voters are really feeling about President Trump at this point in time. But I want to go ahead and play this clip because, again, this narrative is being pushed by people all over the place.
Now, that interview with Nick Fuentes is not just about Nick Fuentes. It's also about Tucker Carlson. And maybe Tucker is trying to create more of a wedge in MAGA, but it's clear that people are looking for the next messenger for Trump after Trump. Who do you think it's going to be?
I think President Trump has made it very clear he'd like to see J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. There are many people who can speak eloquently to what the MAGA base is about, which is growing our economy, stopping illegal immigration, putting Americans first, which is what Make America Great Again means, is Americans first and Americans doing what we can do to grow and live in the best country in the world. But I want to go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene for a second. Just because she left the party isn't indicative of some larger MAGA revolt and President Trump's grasp on the MAGA movement. She is someone who blew up his phone multiple times a day, acting like she was the center of the universe and main character syndrome, when in reality, President Trump's job is not member maintenance and dealing with a specific member of Congress. He is the leader of the free world who has a lot more on his plate than returning Marjorie Taylor Greene's calls back every 5 minutes.
But it's not.
If he invades Venezuela or gives more money to Ukraine, his movement will dissolve.
The American dream will officially be dead, and millions of voters will forever associate MAGA with its decline. Welcome to the midterms.
Welcome to 2028. This is the barrel of the gun that we are looking down.
I was done with MAGA at the moment he looked us in the face and he said, what files, right? What are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? Pam Bondi said it was a Democrat hoax. No, I think the entire nation has been hoaxed by Republicans and Democrats.
MAGA is dead. Now we're in the America First debate. Soon it's going to be the America Only debate.
Does voting matter anymore? I don't know. I don't know whether voting matters so much. Like, looking back, I mean, we didn't really have much of a option here, but I mean, we so we thought. But nothing I voted for happened.
Listen, regardless of where you land on the political spectrum, I think we could all admit Sean Ryan is all of us in what he said in that clip, because I think most Americans feel disappointed with the politicians they support, vote in favor of, and then they, again, like to pull the rug from underneath you, and they don't live up to their promises. But that is ripping the GOP base, the Republican base, apart at this moment. And it really has to do with the performance of the Trump administration.
Yeah. So let me just restate once again, because you have to put context behind this stuff and you have to understand the agenda, right, of a lot of people who are pushing this, right? Leftists who are pushing this, their agenda is to break MAGA apart. Why? Because they want MAGA voters to support leftists. That's what they want. That's why leftists are pushing this, because they see this as an opportunity. People who are, again, independent leaning, who just started identifying as MAGA, who previously hated Trump, by the way, but again, they started identifying as MAGA going into the 2024 election because it was cool, right? It was cool to be MAGA going into the 2024 election. You were a loser, okay, or a low testosterone man if you decided to identify with Kamala Harris, right? So it was the cool thing to do. A lot of these people are disappointed because, they don't like the fact that they think that Trump is too pro-Israel or that he's Netanyahu's puppet or something, which, again, I find to be interesting because President Trump in his first administration was pretty pro-Israel, right? I thought that everybody just kind of knew that President Trump was very pro-Israel. But for as pro-Israel as President Trump is and historically has been, he also has shown a willingness to push back against Israel in ways that other presidents refuse to do so, right? Like, for example, if it was up to Israel, we would still be in a war with Iran, which we never actually went to war with Iran. We bombed Iran because of our own interests, not just because of Israel's interests. We bombed them out of our own interests. And despite the fact that Israel wanted us to continue to do more, right? If it was up to Israel, we would have a full-blown ground invasion of Iran. We would be in Iran fighting right now. President Trump said no. He actually made Iran and Israel stop fighting despite the fact that they didn't want to stop fighting. He also forced the Israelis into this current, very fragile, I will admit, very fragile ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, right? He got back the hostages. And right now, again, it's not perfect. I understand there's been some casualties here and there. There's been some fighting here and there, but it's still a much better situation than it was when Biden was in office. And it's certainly better than it would have been if Kamala was in office, right? So President Trump has shown a willingness to twist Netanyahu's arms when Israel wants to do things that diverge from our interests, right? And he has done that in ways that, again, we have not seen any other president do with the Israelis, right? So, again, I just find some of these criticisms, specifically that criticism, to be extremely fascinating. Also, on top of that, the other individuals, right, who are on the right, okay, who are saying, oh, I'm not MAGA anymore or whatever, right? Those people are interesting because I feel like President Trump has done quite a bit in regards to what MAGA voted for. Like, for example, I mean, he's essentially rid this country of wokeness at the corporate level, at the government level. When you talk about immigration, he's closed the border, secured the border, he's executing on the mass deportations. Liberals are losing their minds left and right. They're protesting in the street, rioting over it, right? That's how well he's doing. He has at least 500,000 illegals deported already. Again, despite the sanctuary cities, despite the Democrats fighting him tooth and nail at the local level to stop the mass deportations, to obstruct. And that doesn't even count the people who've self-deported. We have net negative migration in this country for the first time in a long time. When it comes to this issue of immigration, MAGA should be extremely happy, okay? He's also going out his way to try to fight crime in a lot of these liberal cities across the country. He's cracking down on crime. When it comes to the economy, yes, the economy is a work in progress, but we're seeing some signs that, again, the president's policies are working. Like, for example, gas is the lowest that it's been in a long time. He's already done the supply side stimulus with a big, beautiful bill. You're not going to see the effects of that until next year, right? Again, a lot of this is just impatience. People are just not patient enough to let the policies work. Yeah, President Trump didn't do as much as we wanted when it came to Doge and cutting down the federal bureaucracy, but hey, guys, it's not a dictatorship, right? President Trump is not a king. That's what we found out, that, hey, when you try to cut the bureaucracy, guess what? The bureaucracy fights back. And then also on top of that, people, a lot of government workers, they lost their jobs, and then those individuals got out and they voted. They voted, specifically in places like Virginia. That showed up in the election. Yeah, stuff like that happens, but we can't say that President Trump has not put in a good faith effort to do what he promised that he was going to do. We may get some type of ceasefire or some type of peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia soon. Again, he's trying to do things. And, you know, for me personally, it's frustrating that people don't have enough patience to wait at least a year, right? I mean, really, you should give him at least 2 years, realistically, because, again, things take time. But we're talking about 8 to 9 months in, and people are talking about, oh, MAGA's falling apart. Even though when it comes to, again, the core part of the MAGA agenda, President Trump has done an amazing job, realistically, in my opinion, fulfilling his promises. Now, again, would I like to see him do more? Like, for example, cut government spending? Sure, but that's not even up to the president, to be honest with you. That's up to the Republicans, and Republicans certainly are not doing that, and Democrats aren't doing it, right? No politician, no major political party will ever significantly cut spending, because if you do that, then people are going to boo-hoo, whine, and cry about that. People are going to say, oh, my welfare is going away, my Social Security is getting cut, my Medicaid is being cut, my Medicare is being cut, the military is being cut. Yeah, if you actually cut the budget like it should be cut, right, in order to have deflation, right, which is what a lot of people, you know, say that they want, that comes with a cost. That comes with a cost. That comes with a huge cost. Can the American people really stomach that? Probably not, right? My best guess is probably not, right? So I'm just saying, hey, I would love to see the administration cut spending. I would love to see them do more on certain things that I think are important, but I understand the reality of politics, right? And that's why I think a lot of these people who claim to be MAGA, who are running around saying that Trump's not doing the things that he promised, I think a lot of these people are opportunists. I think a lot of people are trying to advance their own personal brand, their own personal agenda, because of the fact that Charlie Kirk's assassination has created a void in the movement, a leadership void that characters are desperately trying to fill in order to take control of the direction of the movement, because they know that President Trump is not running again. So again, there's going to be a leadership void, and all of that is going to be worked out mainly after the midterms going into 2028. And that's what you're seeing. That's why you're seeing so much of this, oh, I'm not MAGA anymore, from a lot of, again, major influencers who, you know, traditionally speaking were MAGA or, you know, Trump supporters or whatever. It's opportunity, right? That's all it is. And that's just what it is. They're trying to take control of the movement and trying to influence the direction of the movement. And I don't think that a lot of these criticisms are fair. And I don't think they're being made in good faith. I really don't. I don't think so. I think they're being made because they understand that negativity sells. Negativity sells more than positivity, right? That's just the reality of politics. It's much easier to be in this game when the opposition is in power and you're not in power than when the people that you support are in power, right? The reason why that is the case is because when the people that you support are in power, you got to play defense. We got to defend the mass deportations, right? Hey, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I agree with what the president's doing. I think that Biden let in tens of millions of illegals, and a lot of them got to go. And the ones that got to go aren't just the ones that committed violent crimes. A lot of them just have to go because they're not legitimately here seeking asylum. Not all of these individuals are legitimate asylum seekers, and we can't just let every asylum seeker into the country. Again, a lot of people are going to disagree with me.
Pretty much a 50-50 issue, and that's fine, but some people think he hasn't gone far enough.
Scott, just a second. 53% say, let me just say it again, 53% say that the process for deporting people has been mostly unfair. My point is only that Naira
it's unfair that it takes so long to get rid of
it. You have a final order.
I would answer it that way.
Please let the host of the show talk.
My point is that what Naira is talking about, which is that there are some people who were fine with Trump saying he was going to get violent criminals out, all of that. And they did not believe, because I remember you were sitting at my table saying that, oh, Trump is going to start with murderers and criminals, and they're not going to really be able to get to all the other people because it's going to take too much time. That also didn't happen because there has been indiscriminate arresting of people of all different stripes. And a lot of people in the middle who were okay with some form of deportation of violent criminals are now looking at that and they're thinking that things have gone too far.
I think that what Katie and...
But what you notice from a lot of these I'm not MAGA anymore influencers, right, is that they either say, well, President Trump isn't going far enough, right, even though he's doing a lot when it comes to his immigration issue, okay? Again, net negative migration for the first time in a long time, okay? I mean, just overall A+ success. They either say, well, he's not doing enough, or they don't talk about it. Again, a lot of these I'm not MAGA anymore they don't even talk about politics anymore. They don't talk about what's actually going on in the news, any type of real policy. They don't talk about that anymore. They don't even talk about it. Because again, having to actually talk about what's happening and to come out here and say, yeah, President Trump is actually doing a good job on immigration, that's difficult, right? That's hard, right? It's much easier to say Trump ain't doing enough, or to, again, not talk about it at all and talk about a whole bunch of stuff that, let's be real, in reality, doesn't really matter that much, right? When you talk about the day-to-day of what's going on in the news and politics, they don't even talk about news anymore, right? To be honest with you. It's just drama. It's just drama because it's much easier. So that's my point, is that you have to be skeptical of a lot of this stuff. And that's not to say that there are no legitimate criticisms of the president. Clearly, yes, there are criticisms of the president. As I laid out, I would like to see him cut more spending. I would like to see him do a lot more of what I want to see. But I understand from a political perspective, I can't get everything I want. This is why you have to continue to vote. If the party's showing you, hey, we're making a good faith effort to do what the voters want or what the voters voted for, you just have to continue to vote to make sure that we can execute on that agenda. That's how politics work. So without further ado, context, right? Some numbers here from NBC, more polling that I think really pushes back against this doomsday narrative that's being pushed by a lot of people, again, on the left and on the right. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Everything together. Steve, it's one thing for us to hear from voters on the ground, but then we have to look at the data to see if one or two anecdotal accounts of how voters are feeling actually is applying to everyone. What are the polls telling us right now about where things stand?
Yeah, Ryan, we're looking at numbers in the polls that have moved this fall and really moved, I think, starting with the government shutdown in a way that's concerning for the president and for his party. So take a look right now. This is the average, the real clear average, all the different polls that are out there right now in terms of Trump's approval rating, 43%. Disapproval, you see, is basically 55. Here's the switch, though, from the start of the fall, basically from Labor Day. This is what it looked like. And again, remember, Trump as a president, his numbers have kind of been in a pretty narrow range, historically speaking. And around Labor Day, he was doing, by his own standard, his first and second term, he was doing pretty good. 45-50 here, approve, disapprove. And you can see that now that gap has more than doubled, basically to 12 points in the course of the fall. And it really did accelerate during that shutdown.
Now, again, some context here. Keep in mind, a vast majority of this comes from independents and Democrats. It doesn't come from the actual Republican base, right? We've seen polling suggesting that President Trump's approval amongst actual Republicans is above 80%, right? 85, 86, basically close to 90%, okay? So just keep that in mind, that a lot of this is independents. And independents are important, but you guys got to understand, historically speaking, this is just what happens when presidents get into office, right? And this next data point is going to prove exactly what I'm talking about.
Down in October, and we certainly saw that reflected, I think, in those results in New Jersey and Virginia. Put this in some historical context here. Again, these are sort of modern presidents at this same point, looking at where their approval rating was. You see, again, we say Trump right now, 43%. This is basically a year out from the midterms for these previous presidents right here. And again, you see that Trump number. It's in basically that range. Remember, in the 2010 midterms, Obama and the Democrats got wiped out. In 2013, very bad midterm for the Democrats. 2018, Trump's first term, very bad midterm. It was a blue wave, bad midterm for the Republicans. The interesting one here is Joe Biden. You see where his number was at this point in his term. The 22 midterms the Republicans got control of the House, but it wasn't the red wave Republicans were expecting. It actually was Democrats held up better than they thought they would, especially given these numbers. Why? Because in those midterms in 22, Democrats ended up making Trump a big issue. Trump ended up being a liability in some ways for Republicans.
Well, not really, as much as it was just that Democrats were backlashing against Roe v. Wade, right? That's what motivated them to go out and vote, because they told all their voters, all the liberal young thoughts, that if they don't vote, then they're going to be dying in parking lots from miscarriages, right? That's essentially what Democrats said, and people voted based off of that. Now, again, the context, look at this. President Trump is doing better than Joe Biden, President Trump's first term in 2017, Barack Obama in 2013, and he's doing just slightly tiny bit worse than Barack Obama in 2009, right? Which he was in his first term after the change election, right? So again, when you actually look at this in context, you're like, well, Trump is doing better than any past president at this point in time in the last 15 years. Were people saying that MAGA was dead in 2017? Was MAGA dead in 2017? Clearly, MAGA was not dead in 2017 when Trump's approval rating was lower at 39.2%. Think about that. Was MAGA dead in 2017? No, MAGA was not dead. If MAGA was dead, President Trump wouldn't be in office right now. MAGA was not dead. But today, President Trump's approval is higher, and you got all these people, oh, MAGA's dead. Oh, God, it's over. Oh, really? It's over. He has the highest approval at this point in time than any president over the last 15 years. And if you throw Bush in his second term at this point in time as well, if you throw that in the mix, President Trump has a higher approval rating than Bush at this point in time too. He also has a higher approval rating amongst Republicans than any Democrat has had, even amongst their own voters, right? Among Democrats. So he's doing better with Republicans than Democrats are doing with Democrats. He's doing better overall in regards to approval than most presidents over the past, again, 15 years, 20 years, let's be real, okay, for the most part. But yeah, again, there's this narrative that MAGA's dead, that Trump is done. It's like, what are you talking about, right? I mean, I'm confused, because a lot of it is said out of context. They don't understand. What people don't understand is that this is historically what happens. When a president gets into office, what happens is that, yes, some voters are going to be disappointed, particularly the ones that are low propensity, the more independent-minded ones, that, yes, they tend to abandon the person that they voted for. That's what happens. What we're seeing happening right now is normal, right? It's completely and totally normal. It's normal. Democrats are fired up right now. They're fired up because the president is doing a good job, right? The president is executing on his promises. That's why they're fired up. This is why they're out voting, right? That's what people got to understand. They're not in the streets for no reason. If the mass deportations were fake, they wouldn't have anything to be boo-hoo-whined and cried about. These people were bombing Teslas because Doge was actually cutting federal bureaucracy, right? USAID funds were actually being cut. Programs were being cut. Aid was being cut. Things were happening. So, it's just funny to me, because when you look at the context behind what's happening right now, it all makes sense. There's nothing unusual. Like, this is not the world falling apart. But when you compare that to what you see online, mainly on X, and a lot of these people are really, foreign actors, it tells a different story. It's quite fascinating.
That midterm. And that's one of the things Republicans have kind of been hoping might help them in next year's midterms, that the Democratic Party's image has been so low in polling. And that's why I wanted to show you this. These are the two most recent polls we have since the November election about the views of each party. Two polls so far. We'll see how this develops. You see the Republicans, 38 favorable, 39 unfavorable, well over 50 unfavorable in each one of these polls. Now, what we'd been seeing for a while is that the Democrats were much more unpopular than the Republicans. But in these two polls, not that big of a gap. Look here, in the Fox News poll, 39-58 for the Republicans, 39-58 for the Democrats. In this Economist YouGov poll, again, not much of a gap. So one of the things Republicans have been talking about is maybe being a bit of a boost for them in the midterms has been that the Democratic numbers had been so low. In the two polls we've seen since the November elections, though, not a huge gap between the parties in these two polls. See if that's the start of a trend over the next year. And we just end with this one, Ryan. This is the generic congressional ballot. Which party do you want to control Congress? It's basically a 5-point advantage for Democrats right now. Now, at this same point in the 2018 cycle, that blue wave midterm, it was twice as high. So the climate is not that sort of 5 alarm, you might say, for the Republicans yet. But to be down 5 points a year out from the midterms with the trend lines we're showing you, that's very concerning for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. Democrats, at least historically speaking, are behind where they should be going into the midterms. Trump is basically where a lot of presidents tend to be, right? At this point in their terms, right? In the first year. But people are acting like the world is falling apart. That, oh, it's guaranteed that the Republicans are going to get blown out in the midterms just because Democrats have won some off-year elections, right? They're motivated. Democrats have to keep their voter base motivated all the time. And that's what you're seeing when you look at these off-season elections. You're not saying, oh, MAGA's falling apart, MAGA's dead. No, what you're saying is that Democrats are mad. Liberals are mad. There are people who are legitimately mad about the mass deportations. There are people who are legitimately mad about the Doge cuts, the federal layoffs. There are people who are legitimately mad just because they hate Trump. And they started voting when Trump first got in office. You guys remember those elections that happened where Democrats outperformed when Trump first got in office before he was able to actually even do anything? They were already motivated to vote because they were pissed off that Trump won. They were just pissed off in general. So yeah, pissed off people vote. That's just reality. And that's why I try to tell people in these videos, every time I make these videos, that we have to vote. President Trump is doing a good job. And in order to continue what he's doing and to not go backwards, we have to continue to vote. We have to be just as motivated. Actually, we got to be more motivated to get out and vote than the freaks and the lunatics because they're mad. They're upset. They have all the motivation in the world because they're upset. They're voting out of emotion. So we can't be lazy. We can't get complacent. We have to understand that, yes, the president has won on a lot of issues. The economy is a work in progress. We haven't had nearly as much time as President Trump should be allowed in order to get it right? In order to actually see the results of what he's doing. It's going to take time. But until then, we have to continue to vote because we know what we got over the last 4 years, and we certainly don't want to go back to that. We don't want to go back to that. So that's the point. And I'm going to keep making these videos in order to remind people because people need to be reminded that MAGA's not dead, that it's not over for Trump, and that we can still win if we vote. If we remember, we're still in the game and that we need more support. We need to build our coalition in order to get more stuff done. And most importantly, not to go back. We can't take one step forward and go 2 steps back because, oh, I'm not getting everything I want in 8 months. Oh, God. Right? He hasn't deported 20 million illegals already. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, Trump hasn't created an amazing economy yet. Oh, it's terrible. Trump hasn't cut the deficit by $1 trillion yet. Oh, God, it's terrible. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Things take time. You have to build up to it. But most importantly, in order to do that, you can't go backwards, right? We cannot go backwards. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.